If you've ever left a toxic relationship and thought, who am I now? You're not alone. In this episode, relationship clarity coach Bre Wolta shares her deeply personal journey of healing after narcissistic abuse and the emotional roadmap she discovered along the way. We talk about the power of clarity, the importance of actually feeling your feelings, and why connection and self-discovery are the keys to lasting recovery. If you're ready to move from confusion to confidence and from survival to self-worth, this conversation is for you. Hello, welcome to the Matadoras, and this is Lizzie, and we are so excited. We have such a sweet special guest, and we enjoyed the time that we got to meet with her and talk with her and her passion. And this is Bre Wolta. She is coming in today to share her expertise. She is a relationship coach, a relationship clarity coach, which I absolutely love that relationship clarity. Like if that could be all capitalized, that would be so awesome. And she's first going to give us a little kind of the background of why she's doing what she's doing, what she's passionate about, and what brought her to this point. But then she's also going to share some elements, 3 elements that women need in their life when they're healing from a narcissistic abuse to go from feeling confused and full of guilt to confident and deserving of a healthy relationship. And I think that's something that every person that has ventured in any type of abusive relationship can embrace. And so I am so excited, Bre, to hear your story real quick, and then these great elements that'll help other women in these situations. So yeah, please share with us.
Yes. Hi, Lizzie. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you again for the invite. This is such a cool experience.
It's our pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm a relationship clarity coach, and that middle word is extra important to me too, because these types of relationships feel like a mind fuck. They feel like nothing makes sense. Up is down, left is right. You don't know your center anymore. You're second guessing yourself in every single possible way. And so
Yes.
for us to find clarity is huge. When we can see something, then we can shift it or change it or modify it or step away from it. We have so much control when we find clarity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a big piece of what I'm doing with women. And the reason that I got into this place in general is because I went through my own mindfuck of a relationship with, we could categorize it as narcissistic, as toxic, as unhealthy, as dysfunctional, as all of the above. And when I started dating this person, it very much felt like that fairy tale that I found my soulmate. He was everything that I ever wanted. He was telling me all the right things. He was buying me all the right gifts. He was showing up in all the ways that I had told him that I wished that a man would show up for me. And it felt too good to be true.
Right.
It was too good to be true. A little unbeknownst to me at the time. And slowly from there, we started progressing downhill. It went from that really euphoric, can't keep my hands off of you, you're my everything, I'm flooding you with I love yous and passion and physical touch and all of the things, to then things starting to feel kind of hard. Like starting to recognize places that we weren't aligned in the relationship and fighting all of the time and leaving those conversations really feeling more confused than clear. What I know now is gaslighting. Didn't know that back then, but it was, again, part of the mind fuck where I was like, oh, this is all my fault. I am just expecting too much. I am just too emotional. Maybe we wouldn't be fighting all the time if I could just lower my expectations of him or my needs, or just like turn down the crazy over here, right?
Right.
And I was being fed a lot of that from him as well. And so the combination of the gaslighting and him feeding me these pieces about myself when I already didn't have a strong sense of self. I didn't have a strong sense of confidence, specifically in relationships, in romantic relationships. I had always chameleoned into other men, always like, what can I be so that you choose me?
I love, not to interrupt you, but I love that I was a chameleon to them. I was like, wow, that I've not quite heard it like that before. And I like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
It really was like, if they liked football, I liked football. If they wanted to lay around all weekend and binge movies and eat shitty food, then I wanted to do that. Even if that was totally something that I had no interest in doing, it was like, I'm going to do this so that I can be the type of woman that you like, and therefore you will keep me you will keep choosing me to be here. It was very much putting all of the power in their shoes.
Right.
And so I didn't have a strong sense of self. I didn't have any boundaries. I was very much the people pleaser, very much the rescuer, right? Trying to fix him, trying to bend over backwards for him. And those are all parts that I really had to take accountability for after the relationship ended, because it was easy to see his behavior really escalated to really scary psychological and emotional abuse. And so it was easy to see him as like the narcissist, the one that was ruining my life. And he was, I'm not going to absolve him from the things that he did because they were not acceptable on any level. But I remember that moment where I was like, oh, shit, like I am also codependent.
Wow.
I also lacked boundaries in this relationship. I also didn't speak up. I also didn't leave when I saw the red flags. So coming out of that experience, it was really important to me to do that healing so that I didn't get into another relationship like that ever again.
Right.
And that was really the motivation. It was just like, I can't do that again. I wasn't even thinking about a healthy relationship. I'm just like, anything's got to be better than that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put in the work and do my things to heal from this.
Right.
And the healing process was complicated to say the least. It was layered, it was nuanced. One day I was missing him, crying on the floor in a ball while I'm like filing a restraining order. Like it was just so much to try to make sense of. Again, with the confusion, that when I came to the other side of that, I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to hold space for women and be that person that can walk alongside you, that has been there and knows what you can expect, can be there to tell you that you're not crazy, to be there to hold the space for all of these different wild emotions that you're feeling, because that's what I needed. I needed that in my journey. So
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a lot of coaches, I think, and a lot of people with podcasts too. It's like we end up here because we've been through some shit. So
Yeah, we've been through some heavy stuff that has literally made us go, if I help one person to not go down this path, or educate one person to protect somebody from death. And I know that's kind of sounds dramatic, but it's the 4 people die a day, right? From abuse. Going back to the chameleon, because it kind of struck me, and I jotted this down, and before you get to some of your other meat and potatoes, because your journey fascinates. Do you think, because it's interesting when we get into these relationships, we become a chameleon when we look back. And then, but do you think that there's times that the actual chameleon is the person that we start dating because they immerse themselves into us?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a
And
great
then they
point.
shift and change
Yep.
and then when we're committed because we build those roots, we're designed that way. And then all of a sudden we are the ones that actually are the chameleons.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that point because especially during the love bomb phase, if you're interacting with a narcissistic person, they are putting on a mask, right? They're becoming the very thing that you're telling them that you want. They're mirroring all of the qualities that you like about yourself. They're getting interested in your passions, right? They really kind of become like a duplicate of you in a lot of ways. Like it's kind of weird when we think about like, why did I fall in love with this person? They were like, it was like falling in love with myself.
Yeah.
And that's part of what's so hard to let go of, because we've seen them be this character, right? That we've seen them put on this mask and do this dance. And so part of our brain always knows that they're capable of doing that again if they just A, wanted to, B, had the capacity, C, weren't drinking, or D, was going to therapy, whatever the like thing is that needs to happen.
Right.
And so it's really hard for us to let go of that felt experience when we are trying to let go of the relationship.
Absolutely. And that's why we, like you said, that's why we hang in there.
Yeah.
We think that we're going to get that back. We think that tomorrow's a new day. We've had these great conversations, and you may have a good day, and then the next day it's like, whoa, where did this come from? Yeah.
Yeah, which in any sort of rational frame of mind makes zero sense, which is why we spin our wheels trying to figure out what's happening, what we did wrong, and what we can do to fix it. And then all of our mental energy is going towards fixing it, doing the therapy for the both of us, or reading the self-help books for the both of us, or trying to rearrange our whole communication style from one side. When you're dealing with these types of people, you're just banging your head against a brick wall. Like there's no there's no shift that's going to happen that's going to be genuine and sustainable. You might get
Mhm.
sucked back into the love bomb phase of the cycle, right? And spin around again.
Yep.
But it's not something that's true and authentic and real.
Yeah. And it becomes a living hell for many because they keep staying in it over and over.
Yeah.
So, getting out of these toxic relationships, we find that a lot of us need to reinvent ourselves. And it does look different for everybody else, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so please, I would love to hear your three elements that we need in our life. I think this is something that a lot of women and I know there's men out there too. Dina and I say we know
Yeah.
there's men too, but that really are going to embrace what you have to share
Yeah.
and encourage and hopefully give hope for these people that are really starting this journey to get to the other side.
Yeah. 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 These elements to me are so important to understand and to like actually hold on to. It gives you sort of a framework and something that feels really, really unpredictable and out of control, right? When we're trying to heal from
Mhm.
this stuff, we're like, feel like we're just ping ponging all around and up and down and the emotions and all the things.
Right.
So for women and men listening, please let yourself absorb these elements and see how you can start to incorporate pieces of these into what you're doing. So the first element is clarity. And usually we're really good at this element, this step. It's like we are doing the research around narcissism. We are
Right.
listening to the podcasts. All the listeners who are listening to the podcast right now, A plus for finding clarity around what type of relationship you were in, trying to hear other people's experience of similarities. And clarity can also come from therapy, it can come from coaching. It's really that intake of information and the analyzing of what that was. Like, let's just put some facts around what happened instead of trying to make sense of something that doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
So if we're analyzing, we're intaking information, we're learning. But the problem that a lot of people have in healing is we get kind of stuck here. We just keep intaking information. And we think that if I learn about narcissistic abuse or I learn about betrayal, then I will heal from narcissistic abuse or narcissistic or betrayal.
Yeah.
And those two things are very different,
Yeah.
which is a something that happened to me where I was like, I spent a lot of time in therapy connecting A plus B equals C and thinking that, okay, then therefore I should not feel these things anymore, or I should be healed, I should be free from the trauma that I went through in this relationship. And it took me a while to understand the second element, which is feeling and
Some people don't
integrating.
want to feel anymore, right? Like I think they're kind of the clarity comes right after the fog, the brain
Yep.
fog. Like we're like,
Yep.
yeah, clarity. And like I'm like going, yeah, this is absolutely correct because I can't tell you how, not just myself, and of course, as you were saying, yourself, but I've known a lot of other women that are like in the stuck of this portion of the clarity portion. And so now we're going into feeling, which is, I think, a really, and before I know what you have to say. So if I'm
Yeah.
saying something that's kind of contradicting what you have to say, that is something that I think we get to the point where we want to stay numb because that pain is still very raw,
Yes.
but yet we have to journey through it, right? Okay. So sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh
No,
yeah, that
exactly.
makes sense. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And
Carry on.
to that, so many of us are not taught how to be with really distressing, intense emotions without pushing them away, without distracting with Netflix, without grabbing the tub of ice cream, right? It's like, how can we just sit in the discomfort and let ourselves experience the emotion without it overwhelming our system?
Yeah.
So that's also a skill that we have to learn if we haven't been taught how to do that. So the perfect metaphor that I have for this is if we think about being in the middle of the ocean and there's a storm happening, we are clinging to this buoy that I call the analytical buoy, where
Mhm.
we're like, if I just hold on tight and keep understanding all the things, then I'm going to get out of this storm and I'm going to be okay. Right? I'm just
Mhm.
holding on really tight. And really, what we need to do is let go of the analytical buoy. We need to have an oxygen mask to be able to go down into the feeling, to be able to be with those waves of whatever the turbulent storm is. And in my practice, the oxygen mask the thing that helps us feel safe enough to feel is a tool that's called EFT tapping.
Right.
Are you familiar with EFT? Have you ever heard of?
I have heard of it, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that haven't, and
Yeah.
I couldn't regurgitate. That's probably the worst thing to say, but I couldn't probably like spit
Yep.
it back out at everybody else, if that makes
Regurgitate's
sense.
the perfect word. Yeah. So EFT tapping, EFT stands for emotional freedom techniques. And in the most basic, simplest way that we can describe this is it is using the body to signal to the brain that we're safe. So we are stimulating different acupressure points on our face and our torso and our hands while we're processing something that feels way too big or is throwing us way out of whack. And by stimulating these points, we are regulating the nervous system. So it's helping us move from the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, freeze, fawn, get away from danger, turn on, activate, run, do the thing,
Yeah.
to the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. And the reason that that's so important is for two reasons. If we don't feel safe in the emotion, we are going to get out of the emotion. I'm going to disassociate. I'm going to distract. I'm going to do something that's like, I'm going to turn my head. I'm going to put it in the sand. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to not feel. Turn to drugs, turn to alcohol. We have a lot of maladaptive coping mechanisms that work temporarily.
Right.
It will temporarily take me out of the feeling, but that feeling doesn't go away. So we need to feel safe enough to be with it. And we need to feel safe enough in our body for our brain to allow us to integrate the feeling.
Yeah.
So when we are in our sympathetic, when we're in that fight or flight or freeze, we only have access to that part of our brain. We don't have access to the rational part of our brain, to the emotional part of our brain, because all of our resources are just being put into how do we survive in this moment. And I don't know about you, but having 4 options, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it's not very many options.
I was going to say, many people that come out of these relationships, they don't know that they continually live in this type. I didn't know that I had that problem. Like I could not seem to get out of it because I didn't know it was a problem. I didn't know it was a thing.
No,
So
it's normal. It's it becomes the baseline that you're living in, right? We like up our baseline of where our nervous system sits all of the time if we are living in a unsafe environment.
Right.
And when we're in toxic relationships, it's unsafe on some level, whether it's unpredictability for their moods, whether they're lying, or whether we're being betrayed, we're walking on eggshells, we're trying not to start another fight, right? There's some amount of hypervigilance that's happening. It's not ever like I walk into a room and I feel relaxed with this person and I can let my guard down.
Right.
It's like, what's going to be today? So we get really used to living in that state. It's part of our survival mechanism to adapt, but that doesn't mean that it's healthy or helpful in our healing.
Right. Yeah,
And
no, it's not.
And physically too, when we are stuck in the sympathetic, our cortisol is pumping so hard. And cortisol causes disease, it causes inflammation. There's like a list of things that can happen in your physical body, no less what's happening with your mental health. So having physical symptoms when you are about to exit or just exiting these relationships are really common too. I know for me, I was losing a lot of hair and I was like, what is happening? I have no idea why I'm losing hair. Afterwards, I could see because I was living in such stress that was the way that my body was trying to purge that extra cortisol, that extra oomph that I was carrying around.
Yeah, that cortisol is really amazing, isn't it? And the damage that it can cause.
Yeah. And it's much harder to bring that down than it is to ramp it up.
Like you said, it's a rewiring of everything. And like the EFT, because someone really close to me has gone through some serious trauma and they're doing EFT a lot. But they said they were using some kind of just mechanism that so I thought that was fascinating because I was like, please tell me more.
I wonder if that's EMDR.
It might be EMDR.
Yeah. EMDR,
all these short little acronyms.
Yeah. EMDR it's a stimulation of both hemispheres of the brain. So sometimes we find that stimulation by holding on to like these little remotes that vibrate at different sequences. You can also stimulate it by moving your eyes back and forth on the screen. Sometimes, or in person, a therapist will move like a wand that you watch as you're processing through something. Similar in that we're creating the safety in the body and we're using the body signals to be able to get deeper into our processing.
That's yeah, I wasn't sure what the difference was, so that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, but
That's
yeah,
okay.
I
So,
did. Go ahead.
so we have to have the nervous system regulation to be with the feeling or we'll run away from it. And we have to have the nervous system regulation to be able to then make sense of the feeling, feel the feeling, and integrate the feeling. And I want to give an example here because this is something that I hear from women all the time where they're like, I am crying nonstop. It's feeling
Mm,
is not a problem for me. And I'm like, yeah, but what are you crying about? And what is the sense in your body while you're crying? Because if we're crying in that state of, in the sympathetic state, and we, in our brain, we just keep saying, how could he have done this? Why did he do this? Right? We're still in the analyzing while we're crying. That's
mhm.
different than allowing yourself to drop into the sadness of what it feels like because of whatever they did.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep, it
The difference.
does.
So we stay again on the surface level of the emotion. We're crying, so it feels like we should be integrating and moving this thing. And then we get really frustrated that we're just teary all the time and can't, like, it's never actually coming through the cycle. It's never
Yeah,
completing the stress response cycle.
right.
So if you're in that situation, listeners, try regulating your nervous system and see how that shifts your ability to drop into that ugly cry and feel it and then come out of it. Because
Mm,
really, emotions are meant to be felt in like 90 seconds. Like, we're not, emotions don't need a long period of time to move through. But when we keep them on the surface, it really prevents that whole process from completing.
right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's some that's something that's like if you're a listener, you might have to listen to this several times just so that you can go, okay, what was that again? Number two. Okay, clarity, I get. That was right out of the fog. And now it's feeling and all the other stuff that goes with it.
Yep.
Okay. That's
And I will send you to put in the show notes. I did an episode on finding self-love and trust in yourself and so that you can have healthy relationships, and it's about using EFT tapping to
mhm.
help you process through. So it teaches you more about that specific tool. Listeners can find that on my podcast, which we'll link. But there's
Yes.
other ways also to regulate the nervous system. So deep breathing, going for a walk, being in nature, putting your hands on a tree. There's a
Yes.
lot of ways that we can ground and
Mhm.
find more of that calm in our body.
Yeah. And we do talk a lot about the breathing, the box breathing.
Yep.
And we did like one on cortisol. So all this is just
Yeah.
so fantastic. I love the way you're presenting it and just kind of bringing all this back around and then
Yeah.
bringing in stuff that some people probably didn't even think about with the EFT. I'm
Yeah.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the reason I feel really passionate about these three elements is because I don't want to demonize the first one, finding clarity,
Hmm.
even though a lot of people get stuck there. Clarity is really important for us to put some sort of like framework or understanding around what happened is part of being human, right? We need a why. We need
Yeah.
that meaning of things in order to wrap our head around what's happening. So that part is important, but just don't get stuck in that part of the process. Then you move to regulating your nervous system, to integrating, to feeling. And then the third element is being in connection. So a lot of times in these relationships we're isolated, literally, right? The person might
Yep.
be literally isolating us from our friends or our family, but more so we feel like nobody really understands. And even if I try to explain what's happening in the relationship to a friend of mine, they're not going to understand it on the same level. And they're definitely not going to understand why I keep going back or
Yeah.
why I stay. So being in connection with other women or men who have been through the process or been through the experience is vital because when we can connect, then we can lower the shame. We can come out of our embarrassment. We can feel less alone, right? We can feel validated and witnessed in, yeah, I didn't see that red flag, or maybe I saw it and I chose to not see it because it wasn't safe for me to leave yet. So there's so much compassion that we can find when we're surrounding ourselves with safe people who can hold space for the complexity of what is happening with us.
And I find that to be, it's interesting because this may be the worst analogy, Brie, ever, but I feel like these three elements are kind of like an onion. The
Uh-huh.
outside, the clarity is the easiest, right? You see it, you feel the clarity, and then, it's a little whatever to get it off. And then you get the feeling part. That's a little harder. You get, I think that's the part that we get stuck between the clarity and the feeling
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
because we're like, I know I got to feel this, but I'm not ready to feel it.
Yeah.
But then I'm going, being in connections. One thing I've noticed about anybody that is recovered, most, not all, some of them, they've been able, they had their like support system in place, they had it all set up. But that to me is the small number of people that are coming out of these relationships. I really think that the hardest part are people finding connections again because they were isolated because of the shame, the guilt, whatever the reasons are. So I think with you reinventing yourself, sometimes you got to figure out how you're going to find those reconnect or find connections again because you kind of lost a little bit of your identity.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were isolated. You were on an island for probably, who knows? Some people have been on an island for 20 years and some people just a year, but it's enough because
Yes.
that makes it each person has to journey through that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that finding yourself, right? That reinventing of yourself can be also a really painful process because oftentimes when we get out of these relationships, we also see toxic friendships, we see toxic work environments that we're in, right? We see
Yes.
these other parts of our lives where
Yes.
we maybe thought we had connection, but they actually aren't emotionally safe people.
Mhm.
So then we're weeding out those people and then we're even more alone and we're like, am I just going to be alone forever romantically and have no friends? What's
Yeah.
happening? So being able to put yourselves in spaces with people who share the same values, who have had shared experiences, right? That's really important for us to then be able to cultivate the new sense of self, to really lean into who am I without a man telling me who I am, or who am I without having to chameleon into other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Wow.
I was venturing into this part of the process in my own way, I sort of stumbled into it. I was like, I don't even know what I like. Like I woke up on a Saturday morning and I was A, relieved that he wasn't lying next to me. And then B, I was like, oh my God, I have all day Saturday and all day Sunday to myself by myself. I had no plans made with people. I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know how I like to spend my time when I'm not somehow orienting around another person.
Right.
And so I had to start very, at baseline, at the basics of writing down anything that felt good. So I had a cup of coffee in the morning. I like coffee. I like coffee. I like really hot coffee that doesn't have any milk in it, right? And just getting kind of specific on the little parts of me that made sense.
Yeah.
And then being able to see that list and be like, oh, I kind of like this person. Like I could get behind this person, right? And
Yeah.
it's an evolving list. Those likes and dislikes turn into, well, what do I actually need in a relationship? What do I actually want in a relationship? And what do I actually value in life? Never had I ever asked myself that question before. And that's such an important piece of the puzzle to know when you are choosing a partner to spend your life with. Because if we don't share the same values, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not to mention if they are also narcissistic, which adds another mountain of a
Dimension.
hill to
Yeah.
climb.
another
Yeah.
another dimension of hell. But yeah, no, I found even for myself being connected, making connections again, the most difficult. And I found it even more difficult after my second divorce, only because my kids were grown. I
Mm-hmm.
moved around the country for his job,
Yeah.
and I had not had any roots whatsoever in the place that I was living at the time. So finding that connection was extremely painful. And I liked how my therapist put it, and I don't know where I'd put it in all this, that I went through a season where you have to almost be in a cocoon to
Yeah.
heal. And I think that'd probably be right between, I think it's coming out of the fog and into the clarity probably. And then also immersing into the feeling part of the whole element process.
Yep. Yeah. Especially if, again, the people around you don't really understand or they don't really hold safe space for you to process in the way that a therapist or a coach can.
Right.
Because if when we are so raw coming out of an experience like that, anything that we try to share with someone, if we sense their judgment or they actually like reprimand us or whatever they're doing in that interaction, then we are really quick to shell back up and think that nobody can support us, right? We're like extra sensitive in that time period. So being able to just to honor that as a season of really like going within into this dark, cozy space inside yourself and learning how to be who you are and learning how to be with your emotions is admirable and a lot of work and very courageous work.
It is. And I was thinking how like I loved how you said honor that space.
Yeah.
I've always said give yourself grace as you're trying to process through these
Yep.
things in your healing process in your journey.
Yep.
But I like honor that space
Yeah.
because I felt guilty being in the cocoon. Like I should not be in that cocoon to heal, to mend, whatever that was. And I felt like something really is wrong with me. But, now looking back, it was a critical part and component of my healing process. But then I had to really get to the point where I was, and to get to the clarity, you're absolutely right. I loved how you would put how you're just kind of staying stuck on that buoy and you're not able to kind of let yourself go to feel. I thought that was a great analogy.
That's a safe place. That's what we're taught, especially in Western culture, right? Is to make sense of things and lead with our brain. There's a lot less education around how do I be with my body? How do I understand the sensations in my body? How do I listen to my body? We could add a whole nother layer of complexity to this with women, most women having the experience of some sort of disordered eating and some sort of disconnection or disagreement with the body. It's like we already have a hard time being in our own skin and being in ourself. So of course we're going to do the thing that we feel more competent at, and that's learning. We know how to do that. We know how to learn the thing, how to go on YouTube, how to watch the videos about whatever we're researching. So it's a common thing to do without knowing any different.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm curious for you, what did your cocoon period look like? What was the resistance that you had? Was it that it was taking too long, or you shouldn't have to feel the feelings? What came up for you during that?
I think for me, it was like I think I had a hard time wrapping my head around. First of all, it was my second divorce. And it was my second divorce as an older woman. And I felt like I shouldn't be here. I'm a well-educated woman. I knew that I had this passion of working with women because at my first marriage there was just a lot of emotional and religious abuse. And this one, it wasn't that, it was totally different. But then looking back, toxicity is toxicity. So I think I felt more vulnerable. When I emerged after my first divorce, I had my 4 children. And I was going to school full time. I was working full time. I didn't have time for any of that. So maybe that did not allow me to go through the process to heal, to move on, to, my therapist said I had a problem with compartmentalizing after my first marriage. So now looking back, I'm like, okay, he was absolutely right. So I think I'm not sure if I had to go through that cocoon stage of my life because I had multifaceted things to work through and process through and just feeling stupid and shameful, ashamed. And I hear that a lot. I mean, people who go through these divorces anyway, or separations in these types of relationships with a domestic partner, we all feel those shame and the guilt and how could I and da 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 da. But I think for me, it was like, how did I get here again?
Yeah.
How do I mean, I moved around the country, so I've been uprooted. I felt like I had nobody. I had family and I had close friends, but they were not in my area that I lived in. So I think I just had to journey through that. That's why you can't go through the fog, the clarity, and jump to the connections. I know people that it takes 2 years to 3 years before they can start making the connections. And I don't know if it's because of just their process of how they're having to deal with it, or it's just, we all get stuck in each probably phase as we're moving forward. Yeah, it took me a long time to get to being connected again, truthfully.
Yeah. That part that you shared about the compartmentalization.
Yeah.
That's often what can happen, or I guess that's what causes these traumas to linger for long periods of time. Because when we have a trauma that happens, if we compartmentalize it and stuff it away, it doesn't make it go away, right? It's not the same as integrating that experience through the body.
Yeah.
So it will come out somewhere, some way, somehow. And it sounds like in your case, it was compiled with the traumatic event of leaving your second husband. And then you had double stuff to integrate, which of course you were like, I can't be bothered by people. Like I need to, all my energy just needs to be in this in this space.
Yeah. I had to feel some things from that first separation
Yeah.
to the second separation.
Yep.
And the pain points were incredible. And then the lost, I was incredibly lost. So yeah, there was just a lot of stuff there that I had to walk through. And my mom's always, I was raised where my mom would say, tomorrow will be a new day. So that's been the mentality. My sister and I talk about that. But here's the thing, tomorrow is a new day, but it really isn't if you haven't been able to deal with the issues that need to be dealt with. And I
Yeah.
think I said that to my sister like probably a month or so ago. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You can't keep waking up and thinking that it's going to look different if you're not dealing with what's really hurting you.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mm.
it's driving our experience on some level, whether we are conscious of it or not. And
Mhm.
so to come back to the clarity piece and why that's important, it's like if we can understand the traumas that we hold, then we can start to be with them, shift them, move them, feel them, integrate them so that
Yeah.
we're not walking on this minefield of trauma. We are actually doing something to prevent future pain because we're not having to step on the same minefield, so the
Yeah.
same mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. I wrote a lot of notes and I have
Yeah.
this recorded so I know that I'll be able to watch it again and again. But Bree, I so enjoy talking with you. And I know Dina does too. And she's disappointed that she can't be here today. Is
Yeah.
there anything else I would also like to ask? How can people get a hold of you? And I'll make sure that we will make sure that there are links and everything else. But just in case, what's a good way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website has all of my resources. So it's my name, brewolta.com. And you can find freebies there. You can find my longer courses. You can find online courses, lots of different options for wherever you feel like you are in that journey. And for podcast listeners, I have a special on one of my online courses, which is called Find Yourself Again. And that goes along nicely with what we're talking about because it is a 3-part online course that you can totally do at your own speed that walks you through how to start to understand what your values are, what your non-negotiables are, like your unique red flags. We hear a lot
Mm.
about like the 5 red flags to stay away from,
Yeah, yeah.
but we all have our own non-negotiables. So
Mhm.
identifying those, identifying your wants, your needs, your likes, your dislikes, it walks you through a very simple process to be able to do that. For anybody listening on the podcast, you get 10% off. So we'll put the discount
Nice.
code is podcast 10 when you go through the link that's in the show notes there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No, go ahead.
well, I just want to say for women who are in that space, the fact that you are listening to this podcast and you're hearing other women's stories is also a form of connection. So just allowing yourself to not feel so alone in the experience. Maybe you're not ready to go out and make a new best friend yet, but potentially you're listening to these stories and you're like, "Oh my God, she felt that too," or "Oh my God, like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who's ever gone through an experience like this."
Yeah.
And that type of connection in and of itself can also lower the shame, lower
Wow.
the sense of aloneness, the sense of I'm in this really dark tunnel and I can't see the outside. I can't see behind me and I'm stuck here and I don't know where to go. When we
Yeah.
can feel like we're not the only one in it, it helps us continue to put steps forward.
Yeah. Wow. I like that. That's really well said, Bree.
Yeah. And
Thank you. Go ahead.
yeah, I will say too that the my longer term programs are based around those 3 elements. So
Mm.
if you are looking for a space to be able to find the clarity, to integrate your feelings, and to be in connection, I have 4-month long programs that I hold for women as they are moving through it at any stage, whether you're on your way out or you have just left and you're like, what was that? Would love to have a conversation with you and a free call and just see if that is aligned for you.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure someone will definitely be able to connect and understand and need the supports that you have to offer. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Just one person gets it from like, I mean, I am very fortunate to have worked with dozens of women and
Mhm.
be able to see them move through their journey and move from that place of, I can't imagine this pain ever ending
Yeah.
to at the end being like, I don't know how I stayed with him for so long. Like, I want nothing to do with that person anymore. And like the release that we feel after that.
Yeah.
So it's been such an honor to be able to walk the journey with women.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, this is why we do what we do, because of just the hurt and the pain that we walked
Yeah.
through ourselves.
Yeah.
That if we just have one person that will hear this, one person that we can help, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. So good.
It is. It's exciting. It really is. So if anybody will have all the links, we'll, hopefully if for any reason you're like, who was Bre again? Or just reach out to the Matadoras, matadoras.com. We will be happy to help connect you with Bre as well. So let's summarize some of the key takeaways with our conversation with Bre. First, we talked about clarity as the foundation of healing. Understanding what really happened in a toxic relationship is the first step toward freedom and growth. Second, you have to feel to fully heal. Avoiding emotions only delays healing. Giving yourself permission to feel is an act of strength, not weakness. Third, you're not meant to do this alone. Connection with others who understand your experience is vital for validation, support, and true recovery. Fourth, self-discovery is part of the process. Leaving a toxic relationship is the beginning of learning who you are, what you value, and what you truly deserve. 5, codependency and confusion are common, but they're not your identity. You can break those patterns and rebuild with self-trust and compassion. And then finally, 6, the cocoon phase of healing is sacred. Give yourself the time and space to transform, just like a butterfly. You are becoming something new. We really enjoyed our time with Bre Wolta today, and we hope that you enjoyed our conversation as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and we hope you have a wonderful day.